Hi, welcome. My name is Charlotte. I love colorful and sparkly makeup, but I don't love capitalism and I don't love consumerism. Sometimes in the makeup world, those two things can feel at odds, so my channel is all about connecting them and loving and appreciating makeup while being critical of capitalism and other forces at play in the makeup industry. If that kind of content sounds interesting to you, then of course, please consider subscribing and like this video before you go. Today, I'm going to be talking about my no-buy year for 2025. I have tried to film this video exactly 4 times already, and I kept filming it and not being happy with the way it came out, not being happy with the tone. Sometimes it felt too scripted, sometimes it felt not scripted enough. And I also feel like, I've been trying to make this video for a month, basically. A lot has happened in that month, and my feelings about it keep changing. At the beginning, I was feeling really angry, but also really energized as, things have progressed and Elon Musk has increasingly taken over our government. I've been feeling a little bit more despair. I still feel angry and I still want to be able to harness that anger and put it toward productive, work to create the world that I want to live in, even if it's on a very small scale. I've been reading and listening to a lot of new ideas as well this past month, and that has also sort of been reshaping the way I think about things, by the day, by the hour. This is just like a snapshot of where I'm at one moment in time, and I really hope that this is the version that gets posted and that this is the last time I have to film this exact video. I kept getting into the weeds on things that I would like to make separate videos about. But this video is about my no-buy year 2025, and I want to talk about my motivations for that. I'm following a model of a lot of creators that I follow who are also doing no-buy or low-buy projects for all or part of this year. I'm going to have a bunch of them linked below, taking lots of inspiration from them as I always do. And a lot of those videos start out by talking about people's motivations for changing their habits, for going on a low buy or no buy. I think the idea behind that is that recognizing and thinking through and also reminding ourselves continually of our goals and our motivations is a good way to stay focused and stick to those goals. So I'm basically breaking this video into 3 segments. One is what's motivating me, and I'm going to use that section to lump a lot of my negative feelings. And then I'm going to have a section I'm calling what's inspiring me, and that one I think is going to be a little bit more hopeful. And then I'm going to very briefly go over my rules for the no-buy and some more logistical things. A lot of my motivation for this no-buy essentially boils down to fuck billionaires. Fuck billionaires and the corporate capitalist class that is controlling our lives. I'm tired of living under an oligarchy. And to be clear, this is a problem that predates Trump being president. The Citizens United decision happened in 2010. I was in high school at the time. I took AP US History 1 year after that, in 2011. I don't know if you had the same experience if you also came up in the American education system, but that was the first time I really had any contemporary modern history, was in 11th grade AP US History. And by the time I took that class, Citizens United had already happened. It happened the year before that, and I remember learning about it, and that has been American democracy as I've always known it. That was essentially the first time I was learning about our modern political system. I know this probably sounds crazy to think about, but so much of our US history growing up was the Revolutionary War. So we live in an oligarchy. We have been living in an oligarchy And this applies to, center-left politicians as well. So many of those politicians represent corporate interests, and our lawmakers are much, much, much wealthier on average than the people they represent. I'm looking at an article right now from early 2020 that said that a majority of the lawmakers in the 116th Congress were millionaires, and perhaps more importantly, we know that they are beholden to lobbyists. We have been ruled by rich people for a long time. That said, it's extremely alarming and disheartening to see that accelerate so quickly and to see Elon Musk gain so much literal, explicit, out in the open power, even though we know that people like him have been influencing things behind the scenes for so long. So fuck billionaires, fuck corporate control of the government, fuck capitalists, by which I mean this ruling class of billionaires, corporate executives, shareholders, corporate landlords. These people have so much control over our government and our political process, and they also have so much control over our lives. So many of our choices are controlled, manipulated, orchestrated by the capitalist class. And that's happening from all sides. In many cases, they are our employers. We depend on them for the paychecks through which we meet our very basic needs. Many people are just a few paychecks away from losing their home. In the United States, of course, our healthcare is also provided at the mercy and the discretion of our employers. So we are dependent on them for that as well. It's another way that they are able to exert control over us. And they're also the people selling us things. So I'm talking about corporate brands here, I'm not talking about small independent makeup brands, but by and large, when we are buying consumer products, most of the time we are handing money to billionaires and the capitalist class. When it comes down to it, billionaires want me to spend my money on makeup because it makes them richer. And on the other side, it makes me less financially independent, more trapped in a cycle of consumerism, and then even more dependent on the corporate class through my employer. So reducing my consumption and being critical of consumption in general, that has always been something that I've felt like that's a way that I can resist these forces on a small scale, resist the flow of my money to billionaires. They're already stealing from me through the basic mechanisms of capitalism. We're also seeing unprecedented wealth consolidation, especially now in the last 2 weeks since the Trump administration took over. I mean, we're watching in real time as Elon Musk, head of the Department of Government Efficiency, literally tries to cut people's benefits to explicitly fund tax cuts on the rich. That's what they're doing. That's why they need to find all this budget. So to whatever extent possible, I would like to resist this. I would like to withhold that money, to not willingly give them more than they are already taking and stealing. This is where I've really, really struggled with what I'm thinking and what I'm trying to say and what I want my, message should be. I believe that personal responsibility rhetoric can be very harmful when it obscures larger systems that cause us to act the way we do. I recognize that we all live under capitalism. To some extent, we're cogs in a machine. Our choices are a product of the incentives and constraints of larger systems. And so it's definitely wrong to say that one person's individual consumer habits are enough to solve the problems we face. And it's also wrong to say that one person's individual consumer habits are causing the problem, or to blame for the problem. And I don't want to blame us as individuals. In fact, I want the opposite. I want to blame the system, and I think that sometimes the system wants to blame us. Consumerism, or people's individual excesses or lack of self-control. That just gives cover to the real problem. The problem is not consumerism, the problem is capitalism. So the reason that I talk about individual choices and think about my own consumer habits is not to say that they are the solution or the problem. But I think they're still important in some way, and this is what I'm struggling to articulate a little bit. But I think it matters what our position is in all of this and how we feel about our position. I think it matters how complicit we feel. Feeling despair with the system can lead us to two kind of dangerous places. One is the idea of no ethical consumption under capitalism, which, yes, to some extent I do agree with that. I also agree with the people who criticize that sentiment. For some people, the idea of no ethical consumption under capitalism can turn into a cop-out and an excuse to just not think about it, not worry about it. Similarly, I also think that feeling despair with the system and feeling like you're complicit in it and that causes you angst and despair, I think that can also sometimes lead you to kind of burying your head in the sand. Like, for example, if you shop at Amazon because you recognize that most people shop at Amazon and within the universe that we live in, it's pretty hard to avoid shopping at Amazon all the time. So if your occasional shopping at Amazon causes you to not want to know bad things about Amazon because it's going to make you feel uncomfortable, then I think that's also a bit of a dangerous outcome. Basically, recognizing rightly that the system is the problem shouldn't cause us to turn away and stop engaging with these questions. In fact, it should be the opposite. But I think there are these psychological tricks that can happen because of the discomfort that we feel with our complicity. And so I guess what I'm getting at is I think that is where personal responsibility and personal complicity actually does matter, because the way we feel about our role in these things can impact the way that we ultimately behave and the way that we ultimately engage with these things. And quite frankly, I think that's another way that capitalists and billionaires are exerting control over us. This cognitive dissonance, this discomfort that we feel with our participation in the system that's created by capitalists, that can ultimately just further benefit the capitalists because it makes us feel helpless. It makes us feel like we have no choice but to continue to consume. And even in some cases that we don't want to know bad things about what the capitalists are doing because it's going to just make us feel even more uncomfortable. So they're controlling our government, they're controlling our brains, they're controlling us as workers, they're controlling us as consumers. This is all sides. And it's hard to know what to do with that. I don't have a good answer. All I can say is that for me, to hold all this in my mind and know it and consume less and more critically, that feels to me like a way, again, of resisting these forces of control and taking back a little bit of agency, even while I recognize that so much of the system is beyond my control. This is where it comes back around a little bit to motivation, because I think it just feels like so much is beyond my control, and yet this is something that is within my power to control, and that can feel good, that can feel like a hopeful thing, like something that I can do. So resisting control, taking back agency, resisting the flow of wealth into the hands of billionaires. This is all related, and also related to this, I want to talk briefly just about financial independence isn't the right word, but financial agency, I guess. Obviously, saving money for yourself, for your own financial future, that's good advice at the best of times. You don't need a political reason to save. You don't need a historical moment to save. We should all be doing that. But this is a moment for sure where I'm feeling just extra motivation to do that because like I said, I want to resist that flow of wealth from us to billionaires. I want to keep my money for my own long-term financial benefit, not the benefit of corporations and makeup brands. I want to have choices and options in the future. I'm also conscious, and like I don't want to sound alarmist, but I'm conscious also of the way that the political situation right now is affecting people's finances. And I think that's worth thinking about for all of us. The tariffs right now have been paused. Maybe they were all just a play, but like they don't have our financial interests at heart. They see this as a zero-sum game and they're taking more. All these crises that we have been living with, nobody in power right now is going to solve them. And these have profound effects on our lives and our choices. I'm talking about climate change, unpredictable natural disasters, supply chain disruptions. I'm talking about the housing crisis, the affordability, cost of living crisis, the fact that work is becoming more and more precarious. I'm not trying to doom spiral here, and I appreciate that people don't want to doom spiral. They don't want to hear other people doom spiral. It's not that I have no hope. I promise you we're going to talk about some more hopeful things, but those things are not going to be addressed at the federal level in the next 4 years. There are other ways that we can work towards solving those problems. But I do think it's important to recognize that we are in a precarious time. And that is just one additional reason that we do need to be thinking about our finances. We need to be saving, we need to be investing in our retirement. And when I talk about divesting or withholding my money from billionaires in the form of reducing my consumption, I'm not talking about divesting from the stock market, and I'm going to link below a video from the financial diet. I'm not super plugged into finance discourse or anything like that, but just because I identify as anti-capitalist and am critical of all the things I'm talking about, it doesn't mean I don't have money invested in the stock market. I do. I think you should too. I wish we didn't live in a world where our financial futures were so precarious and where we were so much left on our own. But the reality is that in the United States, we do need to be taking care of ourselves financially to some extent. So that's another motivating factor, Practically, I want to be able to plan for the future. And philosophically, I'm like, you know what? Like, I want to take my agency back here to whatever extent I can. Okay, so that was my negative portion. I do think it brings me into the more hopeful part, which is what is inspiring me. Now, by this I'm thinking, what are the small-scale, local ways that I can exert some control, that I can take some agency and do something that helps bring about the world that I want to live in. I want to live in a world where people take care of each other, where people's needs are met, where everybody has dignity and a basic good standard of living. And again, that's not happening at the federal level in the next 4 years. It also probably wasn't going to happen under a center-left administration either. One of the things that's really inspiring me right now is mutual aid. This is kind of a buzzword right now, I think. I'm learning more and more about it and becoming more and more interested in it. And in case you don't know the definition of the term, mutual aid is basically a system of collectively and collaboratively exchanging resources and services so that everybody's needs are met without going through institutions like governments or charity organizations. And in that way, mutual aid, in contrast to charity, is inherently political. It's sort of reimagining the social contract. I'm going to link down below some resources that I've been interested in recently on mutual aid. One of them is a book by Dean Spade The other is a video that covers a lot of the same points as the book. But I think for me, the idea of mutual aid is really helping me to envision ways that we can sort of take into our own hands things that the government is not doing. Mutual aid also helps me to imagine small scale, like wealth redistribution, a way of resisting on a small scale that wealth consolidation. So how does this relate to my no-buy? I mean, it's something that's inspiring me to save money, frankly, because I talked about wanting to keep my money for my own financial future and not for makeup brands. Well, I'd also like to spend less money on makeup in 2025 and put some of that budget toward donating to mutual aid groups and also giving to people directly through mutual aid networks. In my area, there's a Facebook group for this. There's also a local mutual aid group that distributes in-kind resources to people, like tents for people who are unhoused, furniture and clothes for people moving into housing. On a national level, you can look for like abortion funds. I'm sure there's legal stuff, immigrant justice stuff that's happening right now as well. Google mutual aid for your area and I'm sure you'll find some resources. Again, these are often different from nonprofit organizations. The idea being that like nonprofits and charity organizations can sometimes be co-opted by wealthy donors, and maybe they're working with the police or they're imposing eligibility requirements that cut out a lot of people who really need help. Mutual aid groups that explicitly work within the principles of mutual aid are keeping all those things in mind and really trying to fill gaps and reach the people who are most in need. Again, I've gone off on a bit of a tangent, but this is another thing that's inspiring and motivating me to stick to my no-buy. And I've actually, I use a budgeting app, and I've actually gone into my budgeting app and I averaged out what I spent on makeup last year, and I've created a budget category for each month. I'm setting aside some budget to put toward mutual aid, and that way it's sort of just an ongoing motivating factor, if that makes sense. Okay, another piece of inspiration. I mentioned a video about mutual aid that I'm linking below. That is from a creator on YouTube called Andrew Sage. His channel is called Andrewism. I actually only discovered his channel a couple of days ago, but I've watched a bunch of his videos so far, and I will link below a few that I find particularly inspiring. Like I said, I haven't watched all his videos yet. I'm not in a position to endorse everything he's ever said or anything like that. He very astutely points out a lot of the problems inherent in the capitalist system, but I feel like his main project is actually to envision alternatives and to really lay out concretely what things could look like in a system that was different, and also what steps could contribute to bringing us there. And his videos have managed to crystallize for me so many concepts that felt really abstract every other time I've heard people talk about them. And in that way, right now, his channel has been a source of hope. I've been talking about a lot of negative things that are motivating me, and anger is, anger can be a good motivating force, but I think you need some hope and direction, and you need a belief that other things are possible. I think it has been really hard for me to imagine alternatives. So if you've been feeling the way I have and you're looking for inspiration and motivation, then I would encourage you to check out his videos. And even if you don't align with him 100% on what his politics are or what his visions for alternatives are in their specifics, I think when we are thinking about alternatives and concrete things that we can do to make the world better and more in line with what we want, it's important to remember that we're aligned on so many things. If you are left of center, if you're left of center left, if you're a person who works for a wage, if you're a person who rents, who's not a billionaire, our interests are aligned in so many ways. And like the first step that we take toward a better world, the second step, the third step, the fourth step, those are all going to benefit all of us. Like I think so many of those first steps are things that we would all agree on. And it's going to take, it would take a lot of progress for us to get to a place where we disagree, you know, which is just one of the reasons why it's so frustrating that our political process is so captured by a minority of people who don't share our interests. Anyway, I feel like this video has actually not turned out to be about my no-buy. It's been about a lot of other things. So it feels a little weird to transition now to talking about rules, but I'm going to keep this super brief. Basically, I'm doing a standard, typical replacement-only no-buy. For makeup, makeup is the only category that's included in this, although of course I want to be mindful of not displacing my makeup spending into other categories. I realized while I was editing this that I forgot to give any kind of update on my optional no-buy project that I started last June. The video going over that project will be linked below, but basically the short version was it was too advanced for me. I still didn't succeed at moderation like I was hoping to. So I still wasn't feeling good about where I was at. And you know, moderation is obviously a good long-term goal for the future, but I decided to go back to the drawing board and do another no-buy because moderation just wasn't working out for me yet. So it's replacement only. That means every item in a category would have to be used up completely before I could repurchase any item in that category. That means no backups. That means when I finish my Holy Grail, I have to move on to something that's not my Holy Grail in my collection, etc., etc. One exception I'm making, well, two exceptions I'm making to the backup rule is my mascara and my brow pen. Both of those are things that I just use the same thing and repurchase them every time. And so I tend to just toss them into other orders to combine orders and stuff. And I do trust myself to continue doing that. I also have some untested mascaras in backup that I don't know if they will work well for me. And I tend to be picky about my lashes, so I'm not interested in hate panning them if they don't work. If they don't work, I will go out and repurchase my $5 Essence Holy Grail mascara. I trust myself to continue doing that and not overconsume in those two categories. The one caveat is that I would not be able to try a new product in those categories, so I wouldn't be able to go and try some mascara I've never tried before. That would only apply if I felt that I needed my Holy Grail mascara. One other kind of larger exception that I think I plan to make is that halfway through the year, so on July 1st, I think I plan to allow myself to make one purchase, one singular makeup product. So that could be, for example, one singular eyeshadow palette or one single eyeshadow, you know, or something from a different category, but just one singular product. I know this makes it technically not a no-buy, and if I get to that point and I'm feeling like I'm good, I may not make the purchase. It would be great to get through the entire year without doing that. But since I've never done 12 months and it feels like quite a bit longer than the longest I've gone, I would rather allow myself an exception that's going to sort of release some pressure and help me stay on the wagon. I'd rather have an exception than end up breaking my no-buy and failing at my no-buy. Hopefully that's not a mistake, but that's what I'm thinking right now, just because I don't know where I'll be in a few months. It is important though that I'm not allowed to cash that in early before July 1st. For, for example, for something that's limited edition. No, it's not just one purchase throughout the year, it's one purchase on or after July 1st. And overall, I would like to approach this in the spirit of making do. This is a concept that Cam, aka Cloverum, has been talking about in a few of their recent videos. which I will have linked below. Go watch those videos to see Cam explain this in a way that's much more eloquent. But basically, what I think they're talking about is kind of resisting this sense of need we sometimes have for having a specific product for every possible need, or like a different option for every possible desire that might arise. In the world that many of us are living in the world that I'm living in, where I have a lot of stuff, I have a lot of nice stuff, I have a lot of stuff I like, and certainly a lot of makeup, like making do isn't a hardship. It's just a matter of seeing things with a little bit more creativity, a little bit more flexibility, and realizing that when a need or a want comes up, usually there's something that I own that's like good enough to suit that purpose. So again, I would like to approach my no-buy in that spirit. I'd also like to take that spirit and apply it to other categories of products where I'm not on a no-buy and I don't have rules, to just have that as like a guiding principle. This was a lot. One of my lights already died. I've changed my lighting over here. Yeah, I really hope this is the version that gets posted. I'm sorry if it was really rambly. I'm also sorry if it was depressing at all. Like, I know that we're all in a state of heightened anxiety, and I'm sorry if I've contributed to any of it. I hope that there's a little bit of hope in this video to temper that. And like I said, there's tons of resources that I'm going to link down below. If you're looking for a little bit more hope, I know it's a small thing. I know it's not going to change the world, but for me, doing a no-buy right now, it's being able to feel that I have control over something during a time that feels pretty scary and depressing. And I would like to leave you with the reminder that local politics still exists. And that means local electoral politics, like, you know, check out who's on your city council, when city council elections are. A lot of powerful action can happen on the city level, state level stuff as well. When it comes to electoral politics, there's also like smaller parties that you can get involved with. For example, the Working Families Party is a national political party, but they support a lot of local candidates. And also remember that politics goes beyond electoral politics, you know? So check out local mutual aid groups in your area, citizens groups that are organizing for other types of issues you care about locally. Talk to people, be nice to people, find people in your community. The local level is where we can make change, and I think that a moment like this at the federal level is a very stark reminder of that. But the fact is, it was always true, and it was going to be true no matter who won the election. Thank you so much for listening to this enormous ramble. I hope that you are taking care right now. I hope you're doing okay. I'm sending you so much love, and I hope to see you back here soon. Bye.